If we bear his image, which we do, Scripture says we bear his image, we live in honor of that image, but we don't worship one another. We live in honor of God's image upon ourselves, but we direct our worship to him. But we honor each other as image bearers, not to be worshiped, but to be directed in worship to him who is worthy of it. C.S. Lewis, and maybe this helped, C.S. Lewis always has such a good way of describing things that helps us understand each other in light of how God has created us as image bearers. This is just a portion of this quote, but I think it's directed to this idea. He says, "There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilization, these are mortal, and their life is ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit, immortal horrors or everlasting splendors." You see what C.S. Lewis is pointing to is this idea that we look at people as something to use, as something that is very base and insignificant. We look at ourselves in that light and we think too little of what we are, and so we are drawn to use those things as though we are gods and we can use them for our purposes. And instead, Lewis points to this idea. He says, listen, if you could see the person across from you as an image of God, oh my goodness, he says, listen, you would not treat it so lightly. You would not treat him or her with contempt. You would not treat him or her as something vile or base. You would be in awe of them, not to worship them, but to honor them as a reflection of God's glory. And so when we use people, and male gives relationship to male, or male dishonors another female, or vice versa, a woman dishonors a man, and we speak and do acts against one another in ways that we are not permitted to do so, because we are not gods. We are the created things, the ones created in the image of him whose glory is eternal, in whom we truly worship. And so our problem in identity is not that we see ourselves as too great and we worship ourselves in that manner. It's that we see ourselves too little and we worship things that are not eternal, things that are created, instead of looking at ourselves as image bearers to honor God.